Good day, all. Ronnie here, your therapeutic coach and chief clinical officer at Mindful Awakening Counseling and Coaching. I'm coming to you today to bust some myths in reference to the difference between being a therapist, a licensed therapist, and a coach. Just to give you guys some insights of what that looks like. There's many different facets of how people choose to run their private practice, whether as a licensed therapist, as a non-licensed therapist, or just as a person in the community who has a niche, a level of expertise, life lessons that can be shared with the community. Now, what I'm seeing here is that there are a lot of people misinformed or just not in the know of what these different positions entitle, and needing a little bit more assistance in helping them determine who's in the best interest of their care, right? One thing, that a model that I always go by is it's enough for everyone to eat, right? There's this crab in a barrel mindset in the mental health sector, right? Because to be very honest with you, most licensed therapists are very broke, financially very broke. And as a therapist myself, I'm a marriage and family therapist. As a therapist myself, even coming out of graduate school, the one thing that I said for myself and even my personal care is that I don't want a broke therapist. Because if you're sitting there and you're worried about how you're going to pay your bills, how you're going to, take care of the things that give you your livelihood, you don't have the ability to focus on my concerns when I'm sitting in your therapeutic environment, right? So personally, I never wanted a broke therapist. I don't. Now, if I have to, there has been times where I have used insurance to procure a therapist. When I was married to active duty personnel, he and I did go and use Military One Source for our services. But what I gathered, and this was during my graduate years, what I gathered from those experiences is that when you are paneled as a therapist, most of the time there is a lot of paperwork involved. And in that paperwork, there's a lot of note taking. There's a lot of pressure that's put on the therapist, not so much to show up in a therapeutic environment to be a consoling point of contact for their clients, but more so get these documents in order so that they can get paid for the services, right? And then you start to see a lot of therapists who where paperwork is more of their focus than treatment planning or really establishing a rapport with their clients. It's just get them in, get them out type of mentality. Now, most of the times, even when I was going to therapy under insurance, whenever you go to therapy under insurance, you will be going to a therapist that is a licensed therapist, or either therapist or social worker, right? So that is that. Another thing, so that's for your licensed therapist. Now, these licensed therapists, they have either a graduate degree or a PhD level degree. They've taken the state test and passed. They've done continuing education, which is required for most states, which includes domestic violence, HIV, and ethics. That has to be done on a recurring basis in accordance to licensure. I won't get specific with that because it's different for every state. Now, going back to myself, when I started my graduate program back in 2013 and decided that I wanted to be a marriage and family therapist, I was in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. So I did most of my education in the Washington, D.C. metro area. And then I decided to relocate to Florida, which is where I am now, living in Florida. I completed my graduate degree in Florida. So a funny story that I always refer back to is just thinking about how towards the end of my degree and my internship, I looked at the regulations of what is it that I was going to need in order to become a registered intern. And there was this big thing that was happening. I came out of school in 2020, right? 2020, in the midst of COVID, all of that stuff, right? And they kept saying, you have 5 years to, that you're able to be a provisional licensed therapist. So I'm like, duh, right? That was always the case for the requirements in Washington, D.C. in the metropolitan area. So coming to Florida and seeing that was not the case there was weird to me. I'm like, why do you keep saying this over and over again? So I did a little bit more research, come to find out people in Florida were spending their whole career provisionally licensed. They were never going to take the test. They were never going to they were always in like an intern type of state, right? So in that moment, what it showed me was that every state is different. Every state have different rules and regulations, and people in Florida have been doing it for years, where they were never licensed therapists, never fully licensed therapists. They were always provisionally licensed. They had a unlimited time amount up until 2020. 2020 is when it changed. 2020 is when they became only had the 5-year requirement to be fully licensed, which would include your graduate degree, your postgraduate internship, your 2 years under supervision, and taking and passing the state exam. This will make you a licensed therapist. One of the things that always gears me up is when people say, you're not a therapist. They feel like they're not a therapist if they're not licensed. That is not true. You become a therapist when you come out of graduate school with your graduate degree as a therapist. You become a therapist then. The regulations requires us not to call ourselves licensed therapists. Licensed therapists, and that licensed therapists are having all of those requirements that I explained to you previously. But they're still therapists. They still went through the same education. They still do the same continuing education. They're, in a lot of instances, more versed and experienced than licensed therapists. This is another example that I have. Straight out of graduate school, probably 1 year into graduate school, I was in my postgraduate internship program, and I had a girlfriend who had known me for many years, and she was looking for a therapist for her and her husband, right? Coming to me for a recommendation, just because she knows me, she knows my life, she knows that my experience towards marriage and family goes beyond my education, right? And so one of her requirements was that she had a therapist that had been a therapist for 10 years, right? And I said, okay. So I asked her, like, so what's the reason for you deciding on a therapist that is that's 10 years? And she was like, well, I just feel like there will be more experience. I said, okay, granted, that's fair. I said, so let me ask you this. I said, you know me. I technically have been a therapist for 1 year. Married and divorced. Married again. 3 children. Blended family. traveled the world, lived in Europe, military spouse, all of these things. Who would you rather be your therapist? A person like myself with only 1 year, or a 22-year-old coming straight out of college who is fully licensed with no life experience? That is a personal choice that you get to make. That's the point I'm making here. That is a personal choice you get to make, not taking anything from the therapist who is freshly out of college, also with a fully licensed degree but no life experience. Not taking anything away from that situation, right? But what I am saying is both are equally trained, equally able to help you through book knowledge navigate, right, and provide you with the tools in order to navigate your own personal situations. One has life experiences, right? One don't. Choice is totally yours. Okay, so now let's go to the next phase of this: coaching versus being a therapist. As we know, in 2025, the world is changing. The world has changed. It is rapidly changing. In that, it is also changing with the way people are choosing to structure their private practices. Okay? Even though currently I am a provisionally licensed therapist. They will consider that an intern. And my 5-year expiration is the 20th of this month. Will I or will I not get fully licensed? I'm still on the debate about that. I have never taken insurance. There are two things that's always made me consider the path that I took in this field. PhD level therapist, which would be the next phase, and I've been in several PhD programs that I did not feel like aligned with me and withdrawn myself from. But when I was deciding to be PhD level therapist or not, there were two questions that I asked myself, like what would be the purpose of me doing this? The purpose of me becoming a PhD therapist was for one or two reasons. Number one was because I wanted to be an educator. I wanted to be a teacher. Number two was because of my ego, and just because I wanted to be called doctor. And there was a time in my career where I knew for certain I did not want to be an educator. That has since changed. And number two, I'm Coach Ronnie. I never care about the ego part of things, right? Like, I believe that this work that I do was assigned to me, right? I don't believe that I chose this work. I believe that this work chose me. So in that case, I was always in conflict, going back and forth for whether I wanted to obtain my PhD. And at this point, I have not. Go back daily about whether or not I want to go and pursue that or not, but I cross that road when I fully get there, and when I find a program that's in alignment with my aspirations. The second thing was, what type of therapist did I want to be? Did I want to be a fully licensed therapist, or did I want to serve as a coach? Okay, I could have been a coach without even going to school, obtaining my master's level marriage and family therapist and counseling degree, without becoming a level 3 trained Gottman therapist. I could have done all of those things because I have the life experience. I've been doing it for years. I tell people all the time, one of the best therapists you're ever going to have is your barber and your stylist. They're therapists too, right? A degree don't necessarily make you a good, empathetic, great listener, ability to allow a person to process and then give them information back, an ability to give tools. Having a degree gives you the book knowledge to give that information. It doesn't give you the instinct. Some people got it and some people don't. It is what it is. And in today's date, we do have the internet, and we do have a lot of people, a lot of imposters just talking, right? They have the ability, and a lot of them, especially when you are in this field and you are trained in this field, there's some great information out there. There's some great information out there, and I'm sure a lot of those people do not have therapists at the end of their credentials. It does not make them any less credible. I just say, people, use your common sense. Use your common sense. Don't give up on yourself. Take a chance on therapy. It's the cheat code. I tell everybody, everyone who speaks to me, they know. I say therapy is the cheat code. Therapy, coaching, whatever it is, what matters the most is that there is a connection. There is a flow and energy when you are in coaching sessions, when you are in therapy. Going back to my decision of establishing my coaching business, and I'm gonna be straightforward with you. When I first came out of graduate school, most therapists who had 20 plus years were renouncing their licensure. I was like, why are they doing that? Why are they renouncing their licensure and just doing therapy, right? And it was because of the red tape. There's a whole lot of red tape. When you are licensed in the state, you can only see clients within that state. Up until recently, based off of the transitions with COVID and things like that, you can only see clients face to face, legally, right? When you choose coaching, you don't have that same red tape. You don't have that same red tape. The risk, honestly, is more so on the client, right? Of you choosing who to pay your money to have the services that they offer, right? Coaches do not have to abide by seeing clients only in their states. Myself, most of my clients are expat clients, right? They're clients that live all across the world. My license in Florida will not allow me to see clients all over the world. To me, that's so sad. That is so sad, because that means that there is a whole cohort of people who aren't being served because of red tape. Because of red tape. So what I do, I tell clients, choose a therapist, choose a coach, choose whatever you choose. Do 4 sessions with them. Do at least 4 sessions with them. Give yourself an opportunity. Give them an opportunity. No therapist, no coach ever is here to fix something in you. They're just here to give you information. They're just here to be a sounding board back to you to help you determine what is in your best interest. They're basically the one to help you cipher through the noise in your head, the constant thought process, the cognitive dissonance that's within your thought process. They're there to help you unravel that. They're there to say, hey, 2 weeks ago you said X, Y, and Z, but now you're saying this. Which one is true for you? Right? They're there to hold you accountable so that you can get to where it is that you say you want to go. Right? And it's okay to change. It's okay to change. It's okay to adjust. So when you hear coaches, understand a coach can be a licensed person. Normally it is not, because there's a conflict in interest with that. A coach, let me go back. A coach can be a licensed therapist, which they normally are not, because there will be conflict in between the things that they want to do as a coach and the things that they want to do, and the red tape that's required for licensed therapists. A coach could be a therapist, graduate level, PhD level, therapists who decided to structure their private practice in the way of coaching, who does not have to hold to the red tape. And in that, let me say this. The reason why you don't hear much from us is because we're not regulated. Coaches are not regulated. We don't want to be regulated. And when we start coming to these platforms and giving you all this information, it's a very vulnerable place to be. It's a very vulnerable place to be. We do very well in our profession. For those who have enough common sense to say, hey, do a little bit more research on the person you're choosing, understand their background, understand their education, and make a decision instead of just being on the internet like, duh, I don't know who the coach is, or duh, I just want a licensed person because I want. If you want that, get that. There are things that there are benefits for having a licensed therapist. Why? Because if they're mandated reporters. A coach is not a mandated reporter. They will always have your best interest in heart. If something is wrong, if there is an occurrence where you will harm yourself with someone else, they have to report that. Coaches are not held to that same regulation. But trust and believe, if you are reporting, they still have ethical guidelines where they're going to do what's in the best interest of their client to protect them, right? But that is one of the things that licensed therapists have to abide by, that coaches do not have to abide by. Also, a coach can be someone who isn't educated at all by the books, which is okay. Because you can have a fitness coach, guess what? I'm not a fitness expert. Why would I be a fitness coach? I would rather go to someone who has studied themselves approved, who is doing the physical work, and who can show me how I don't need a PhD level physical fitness person to be my personal trainer. So yes, he can coach me. Another thing, I got another funny example. I had decided to hire a nutritionist. This nutritionist was, of course, licensed. She worked for the military, and when I walked into her office, she was giving me all the stats. We did all the things, and she was like, "What? You're perfect. You're fine. Why do you want to?" She was questioning my goals and why I wanted the goals that I wanted. And I explained to her why, and in ways it made sense to her, but because I'm a muscular woman, she didn't understand, because she was like, you're 90% muscle. Like, you're the type of woman that shouldn't even look at a scale because you have a muscular physique. Your the scale showed that my inner structure was mostly muscle. So that's where my numbers were coming from. To her, I was perfect. She was very overweight. Very overweight. And so I'm sitting here like, okay, I thank you for the numbers, but your personal opinion, I have no interest in. Why? Because I had no respect for her or her licensure to be able to tell me how to maintain my nutrition based off of her appearance, which showed that I didn't need a scale to see that she was well overweight. So I say all of that to say, use your discretion, do your homework. If you want a licensed therapist, go get a licensed therapist. If you want a coach, go get a coach. But understand that there are different variations. This is why you're supposed to know the questions that you want to ask, know what's important to you, and proceed to ask your therapist these questions prior to procuring them. So either you will have the ability to do that, because therapists like me, I don't do consultations anymore. I no longer do consultations. I put my information out there, and your first communication with me is via your first session. You can ask me whatever it is you want to ask me, and I'm going to tell you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And you can choose to work with me or not. it boggles my mind how there are so many industries that are changing the way things look, but as therapists we're having such a hard time. But I do understand why, because we have been trained that this is a helping industry, which it is, right? It is. Just like teaching is a helping industry. But one thing that I am not going to allow to happen in the industry that I love, because the people that I work with, we have to live amongst these people. I want them to get help, right? There you have to be a certain type of person to choose to be in a field like this, because we take on a whole lot. We take on a lot. You have to be a special type of person to choose to be a teacher and work with children every day, all day, because teachers take on a whole lot. But look how they're undervalued. Therapists, licensed therapists, are also undervalued. So please understand why most of us are choosing coaching as our point of reference. Also, there are coaches who've been out here doing the work that we went to school and got degrees to do for centuries. I actually have a few friends who are coaches, and their clientele is just as prestigious as my clientele. And we learn from each other, and we're growing together every day. There is no crab in a barrel type of mentality. We're not the ones who's angry at you for having a bootleg bag that looks just like my real bag. We don't care about it. You do you, boo, and I'm gonna do me. You do you, boo, and I'm gonna do me. Most licensed therapists are very angry because they have that $100,000 to $200,000 student loan sitting on their back that they're trying to navigate through, while still being broke, while still being slave to insurance companies. And coaches don't have that. Some of us do, especially us that took the educational route. Some of us do. I'm one of them. But ultimately, there are people who are just as qualified, even more so, to sit in front and to help you navigate through your life than a licensed therapist, or a therapist even altogether. And I get them cahoots. I give them praises for that. I have the knowledge to be able to choose. I'm not just going to choose a therapist because they are a licensed therapist. I'm not just going to choose a therapist because they have a graduate degree or a PhD. I'm going to choose the person who speaks well to my soul. I'm going to choose the person that's helping me navigate this life. I'm going to choose the person with the resources to help me accomplish the things that I'm trying to accomplish in life. Go back to the soul level. Go back to the soul level. And I'm always here. You can drop a message up under this post. Any questions you have, I'll definitely come back to YouTube, Instagram, and answer your questions. Send me the questions, because I'm gonna give it to you raw and uncut. Again, this is Ronnie, your therapeutic coach, chief clinical officer at Mindful Awakening, contracting, counseling and coaching. Our website is www.mindful-awakening.com. You can find us on our social links. I'll drop them all here below. Any questions you have about therapy, please let me know. I'll also bring some of my friends out for you guys that are licensed therapists, that are coaches, so that you can also hear the communications that we have from one another. We're also having these conversations internally too, right? You do have these by the book type of people, by the book type of therapists that hoorah you, and no, ain't nobody knocking your hustle. It's enough for all of us to eat. Again, everybody don't have a swag. Everybody don't have a swag. So there are some people who just got it, and there's some people who don't got it, right? And so they want to pigeonhole a whole group of professionals into one group so that they can have more of a chance of being successful. Either you got it or you don't. It is what it is. Again, Ronnie, your therapeutic coach, Chief Clinical Officer at Mindful Awakening Counseling and Coaching. Give us a call if you need our help. Our number is 813-703-8833. Shout out to my expat community out there in Bali, out there in Thailand, all of my folks out there in Portugal. I love you guys. You guys are dear to my heart. I do what I do because of you. I am not going to be pigeonholed by rules and regulations until I have to be. And that time is not today. That time is not today. I do not have to be pigeonholed. I do not have to work up under red tape. This is a very vulnerable video. This is a very vulnerable video, but it needed to be spoken on. I am tired of seeing these licensed therapists that are on these platforms in their bedroom with their sheets and pillows showing. In their bedrooms. How tacky. How freaking tacky. Telling you broke. Have a good one. Until next time, drop your questions and comments below. I'll do my best to get back to them between sessions. And stay happy, folks. Bye.